Hello, and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle in the series Freemasonry and Satanism, number 58. We're moving right along after I passed number 50. Took me a year to get those 50 done. Anyways, the book review on this video is Invisible Residence. Ivan Sanderson, Invisible Residence. There's a couple objects there that were found in Bogota, Colombia, South America. Gold-looking planes, which have been identified by many engineers, mechanical and aerospace. This book here was published 1970, third printing, and it says here, this book is dedicated to our publishers for having the guts to publish it. Invisible Residence. Have UFOs and aliens been living on planet Earth all along? Are they the entities behind the scenes controlling things? What do they know about the sky spraying, chemtrails, the intentional collapse being caused by the governments, economically, threats of World War III? Why did they have World War I and World War II? And after World War II, why did the UFO sightings go off the chart? Alien abductions. And re-abducting people, showing them supposedly offspring where they had been artificially inseminated. So I thought I would, because of the sequence of books I have done in the past 6 or 7 videos in this series, starting from 51 to now 58, it's leading to something. We've studied about the, in Ecuador, Eric book on the gold of the gods, Van Daniken. Carl Brugger in the western Brazil, underground ancient cities of the Cagagors. El Cagagor, I can't remember the name. And then we did the books on dragons and serpents. And they did the one book on the banksters, the reptilians, the Illuminati, Masonic lodges controlling the money and the power in the world. A lot of this stuff is going on and it's a little crazy. And I'm just trying to put it together book by book. Who's doing it, why they're doing it, and what can we do about it? Well, we can't do anything about it if we don't wake up and think about it. So with all that said, let me jump into this book. We'll start out by The Mystery, Chapter 1. And as you know, I highlight material, so I'm not reading the whole book. Some pages it's just a little bit of highlighting. But the stuff that I think is relative and pertinent, straight to the point. Alright, so one evening in the Antarctic, a Brazilian scientist by the name of Dr. Rubens, seconded to the U.S. Navy's Operation Deep Freeze, and aboard an icebreaker, was literally jolted almost out of his body and his mind by something that suddenly came roaring up out of the sea through no less than 37 feet of ice and went up into the sky like a vast silvery bullet. So he's in South America, in the Antarctic. He's on an icebreaker. And what was the date on this? I didn't see it here. And right through 37 feet of ice comes crashing a silvery bullet rocket type thing, and it flies off into the atmosphere. The only other witnesses were the officer on watch and the helmsman, as it was an extraordinary cold day and all other passengers were below decks. What they did witness, sometimes you have trouble trying to say somebody else's words. What they did witness was quite enough. Enormous blocks of ice had been hurled high into the air and came cascading down all around the hole, burst through the ice sheet, thick ice sheet, and the water was rolling and apparently boiling while masses of steam issued from both the hole and the descending ice. To begin with, this report was issued quite formally by the U.S. Navy and only to the Brazilian press. When the latter published it and the European wire services picked it up, it was promptly denied by official quarters. However, the Spanish-speaking Latin American newspapers reproduced it, notably in Chile, and from these airings, the North American wire services ran it merely as a filler. I was trying to double check and see if I could find the date. Obviously before 1970, when the book was published. Keeping these issues from the public is a bipartisan thing. One party simply shrugs and says cover up. The other, in this case officialdom, says it's simply rubbish. There's nothing going on. Neither attitude gets us anywhere. Like I said, I'm just reading highlighted paragraphs, so I jump around. The average citizen just simply does not know how many such seemingly out-of-this-world reports are published somewhere and almost every day and from all over the world. Later, these gleamings sometimes become so massive that somebody publishes a book on the subject, and we admit and unashamedly that this is just what we are doing with this book. Page 6. The plain truth of the matter is that whenever anybody says we still have a problem on our hands, I refer to what have come to be called UFOs. That they are not what we call natural does not mean that they are in any way unnatural, and for the very simple reason that anything that exists must be natural. In 1969, of a massive report by the committee set up by the University of Colorado under the chairmanship of Dr. Edward Condon, that would be the Condon Report. This outfit spent 2 years and some $600,000 of the Air Force appropriation budget to conduct an in-depth study of the UFO problem, and its final overall recommendations were completely null and void. So this is in '69. Now remember, in 1946, after World War II, UFO sightings were off the chart all around the world. But the government cover-up is they sponsor these reports by universities, pay them $600,000, and they get the result that they want so they can tell the public there's nothing to it. Our general conclusion is that nothing has come from the study of UFOs in the past 21 years that has added to the scientific knowledge. So says the Condon Report. So there was a big argument about the descriptions of these UFOs, and one was UAPs. Unexplained aerial phenomenon is a UAP, and of course a UFO is an unidentified flying object. So they were at odds quite a bit of what to call these things back then. Over 50% of the so-called sightings of UFOs have occurred over, coming from, going away over or plunging into or coming out of water. That this fact is known to officialdom is manifest by their official publications, but they seem to have left this aquatic factor out of the statistical analysis. So there seems to be a cover-up here, that the officialdom probably knows what's going on. And if a lot of people don't know it, and if you've been watching my videos, you do know it, is that all over the world there are Masonic lodges. The Masonic lodges have taken over the whole world, and collectively that's called the Illuminati. They do have a religion, and it's worshiping the gods of old, and also the gods described on the hieroglyphics on the Egyptian tombs and monuments all over the world. And the all-seeing eye on the dollar bill over the pyramid is the Eye of Horus. And the obelisk, those pointy things in front of the White House, Capitol building, the Vatican. Every major city has a square, has an obelisk. And that would be the representation, phallic representation, of Osiris, who apparently was abducted by his brother, chopped up into 7 pieces and spread through the corners of the earth. And Osiris's wife, Isis, the name they call the group attacking in the Middle East right now, went all over the world and collected all the pieces but one, and that would be the phallic unit. And so they represent that with the pointy things, obelisk in all your city squares. Interesting stuff. And then they've had a son, Horus, who they put on the dollar bill with the eye. If you look at it closely, it looks like a reptilian eye. So all this stuff comes full circle if you pay attention. So what I'm trying to say is, so behind the scenes for generations, thousands of years, apparently there's some entity or entities of the pagan religion, these Isis, Osiris, Ra, Lucifer, Satan, and many other names, Baal, Moloch, that apparently are the gods of the religion behind this. And apparently they must be living entities and controlling all these secret groups within the Masonic lodges and other secret occultic things, Kabbalah, Rosicrucian, witchcraft. And all throughout history this is described. So anyways, getting back to this, so over 50% of the sightings of UFOs have been splashing up out of the water, hurtling into space, coming from space, flying into the water, and submerging right before ships and people on shore. The reason most commonly given, page 9, or suggested for official silence, or what many people assert as a deliberate cover-up by officialdom, is the fear of panic on the part of the general public. I suppose they're worried that if the public found out the truth, that the public would be a little bit upset and these people wouldn't be in power anymore. So that could be why they built FEMA camps, and they had the 911 and many other false flags, Sandy Hook, look it up. And a lot of the insinuations on TV and the shows telling you what they're doing. Like on the cartoon, The Simpsons, they have the clock in the background that says 911 all the time. Many examples on YouTube. And then, of course, the TV show, the movie Hunger Games, or Divergent. Freedom was not working for these controllers, these UFO aliens behind the scenes, apparently. It was an experiment. And the people who are able to think and do for themselves are not playing into the hands or satisfying the people behind the scenes on how they want to run the spaceship Earth. So they probably decided that they have to go back to a more of a Pharaoh or Caesar king-type rulership where people are told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it, and if need be, lay down and die. Pardon me for throwing my 2 cents in here all the time. But that's what it, we have to put together everything that's going on in the world right now. In the Middle East, archaeologists are digging everywhere, and people over there are being murdered every day. Back to the book. People like Dr. Corden could care less about funny lights in the sky. Apparently solid bodies maneuvering therein in daylight, or even from a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomenon, however grotesque and enormous. But watch out when a UAO, unidentified aerial object, is said to have swooped down close to the Earth's surface, or actually to have landed and produced physical effects on our electrical circuitry, or military bases and things like that. All types of officialdom then just pop up out of seemingly nowhere, and within hours or even minutes, whole areas are cordoned off. Police officers suddenly go silent or change the stories that they have already told their local and trusted newsmen, and a real panic is on. So over and over, many people know in a lot of the UFO sighting cases, crashes and abductions, the guys in the black suits show up and everybody's told to shut up. And this is going on all over the world, except possibly Brazil and India. Further, if a human being or even a domestic animal is alleged to have been harmed or to have shown any signs of physical interference in conjunction with such a low-fly touchdown or landing of a UAO, activity becomes even more furious, and the regulations much more stringent. But when any kind of mental interference is so much as alleged, officialdom seem to become well-nigh hysterical. Page 10, 50% of all so-called UAOs have been recorded as coming out of, going into, and apparently from over and disappearing over water. Does this not have any significance? So have these UFO aliens been living in our oceans and rivers and lakes since humanity began? Which, by the way, I ought to make a little interjection here. I was thinking about something. They talked about, in my last video, like numerous times, something called the Younger Dryas years. And so I put 2 and 2 together. And I thought it might be kind of interesting to discuss it. So as we know here, the last 10,000 years, on the top there, from here to here, 10,000 years up on the top, is the kind of weather we have now. And then back around 11,000 years here, and 12,000 years, this used to be the standard weather then. And back here, 15,000 years to 20,000 years. Apparently in the Bible they didn't have the sunlight and blue sky. They had a canopy of fog, like mist, 24/7. Of course it was light when the sun came out, but you couldn't actually see the sun. It was a cloud cover. And then something happened, and the earth changed. In the Bible this is said, and then the rain came down, and the temperature and everything on the planet Earth changed. So this is going back on this chart 20,000 years. So 10,000 years since when after the flood. Apparently the flood happened about 12,000 where the yellow bar is. And prior to that it was a different kind of planet. My point is if you go on the internet, look up the Sphinx over there in Egypt. and you see which way the Sphinx is facing east. And apparently when Orion is in a certain spot, it's like a clock. When they built the Phoenix, they were telling you what time it was. Now remember, the Phoenix is a lion. So here we are, make this little gadget up. Here we are now. The little clock here is pointed towards Pisces. And that's when Jesus was born. And if you go forward, this is the age of Aquarius. These are 2,000-year periods approximately. So we're at the beginning of the age of Aquarius. So my point is if you go back on the clock, this is Jesus Christ, and you go back 2 more 1,000 years, and you have the age of Aries, which would have been the time when the Hebrews were left Egypt. And my point is, you keep on going back 2,000 years, and 2,000 years, and 2,000 years, and you get to the lion, Leo. So if that's 2,000 years, and we go all the way back here to the age of Pisces, so let's just do the math here. We're going to go backwards in time. This is Aquarius. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. We're in the age of Leo by this astrology chart, astrology. 12,000 years, and looking at the Younger Dryas chart, that would have been back here when they had the different kind of weather as described in the Bible. Interesting. So back in Leo, when they built the Sphinx facing east, when Orion comes up, gives you the time, 12,000 years. It matches the Younger Dryas chart. Apparently, when some entities 12,000 years ago came to Earth, as described in the Bible in the ancient text by Zechariah Stitchin and Boulay, Serpents and Dragon book we just read, they actually landed here prior to the Great Flood, the deluge, set up mining facilities all over the earth. Prior to the deluge, and the Hopi Indians out west, and the ones in Ecuador, Peru, and all over the world, they built underground facilities to save some of the humankind, so there would be some slaves left to continue the mining after the gigantic earth change, the Younger Dryas period, from when it changed from one particular temperature range with no sun, just fog, to a warmer temperature where we have the kind of temperature we have now. So if you take the astrological charts and you run it backwards like I just did, and you match it all up, you come up with a match of years and time. And as we all know, the astrological astronomy old charts used to be the same thing back then, years ago. It's basically the precession of star systems you see in the sky by star outlines over 24,000+ years. So that's how they judged time. It's like you go by a map if you're going from New York to Florida. You go by a map and you follow the highways to get there. These were sky maps so that they knew where the earth and sun was in relationship to the years. So anyways, getting back to the book, just thought that's going to make more sense as we move along, is recognizing the timing of this and the believability of that there probably were these entities that came from someplace else prior to the flood, went back up into space in their big space station, or their moon, during the flood years, which lasted quite a while, and then came back, and the humans that they had put in underground facilities all over the world, Hopis, Peruvians, Mayans, people in Europe, All the cultures all over the world have stories about some people being saved. And we know in the Bible, they have Noah's Ark. So 50% of the so-called UAOs have been recorded as coming out of or going into, appearing from over and disappearing underwater. Does this have any significance? Over here it says, page 11, I have been forced to agree with such investigations that the reason for this is simply that officialdom, the officials that run our world, and I use this expression collectively, knows no more about the business than the buffs or anybody else, and that they are just plain scared. And I would probably say that, for generally speaking, going on down the pyramid, from the seriously higher ups in our society, a lot of those people don't know what they're doing. Like local police, when they protect a site and force people to get away, they don't know the truth. The truth is that all states are of a pyramidal structure with a body politic forming the apex. As I said, the top of the pyramid, the Illuminati of the Masonic lodges, the Vatican, the Pope. I think all the priests all over the world actually know the truth. What's hidden in the vaults in the basement of the Vatican. This, however, is but the facing of the pyramid. Its true functions are prosecuted behind and underneath this facade, usually by a permanent bureaucracy that seldom, if ever, surfaces. Such as a judiciary or a religious mystical hierarchy, in olden times this often was the bureaucracy. So if we all know for years and years and years, the churches were actually the power behind the kings. If the churches didn't give the king the divine right to be king, he wouldn't be king. And he wouldn't be king if he didn't comply and do what the church told him to do. All right, moving on to page 21. A sonar operator on one of the smaller vessels, otherwise listed as a destroyer, reported to his bridge that one of the submarines had broken formation and had gone off in what appeared to be pursuit of some unknown object. The operator did not, of course, know if this was a plant. So they were having some undersea operations to do military exercises, and all of a sudden discovered a submarine moving along, seemingly not normal behavior as a normal submarine. The trouble was, said unidentified subaquarious object was traveling at over 150 knots underwater. No less than 13 craft, including submersibles and aircraft, one must suppose, noted to their official logs that their underwater tracking devices had latched onto said high-speed submersible. So they had a dozen or more aircraft monitoring the system, all of which is said to have immediately been reported to Comland in Norfolk, Virginia. The fastest speeds of submersible submarines have been achieved by the Skipjack class, a teardrop-shaped nuclear vessel of the United States Navy. The semi-official record is 45 knots. 51.8 miles per hour. Thus, the object recorded above beat anything that we can do at the present time by almost 4 times the speed. So they were having these maneuvers, and they spotted this thing moving 4 times faster than any human sub could ever do. And maneuvered round and about at a depth of 27,000 feet. And the record dive for any submarine that existed at the time is 6,250 feet. So that's more than 4 times the depth this speedy little craft was cruising along. So what Ivan Sanderson investigated in this book is a lot of proof that throughout all the years there have been many sightings of UFOs coming out of, landing in, or flying over water way before the UFOs and all that became so popular on land. So did these aliens live in the seas? By the way, that one book we reviewed in my previous book review. About the Sirius star system. The Dogon in Africa, the tribe, said that those aliens came from space, that they were aquatic creatures, and they were described as half fish and half human. So there you have it. These book reviews I'm doing, the more we move further and we review more books, the more the pattern seems to fit, paints a picture. In other words, this thing was literally out of our world. What was it? Perhaps the more pertinent question is, are these reports true? First, it transpires that this is by no means a unique case. There have been numerous other reports of a similar nature by and to our Navy since that date. Second, there have been equally surprising reports made by both Navy and commercial ships officers, mostly giving names and dates going back more than 100 years. The log of a Norwegian ship, TT Jar Esta, records that on the 6th of July 1965, while in passage between Venezuela and the Canary Islands, which is off the coast of Africa, I think, the lookout on the bridge reported a bright object in the sky moving in a northerly direction. 1965. What, did we supposedly go to the moon in 69 to 72? The object is described in very considerable detail as issuing tongues of flame and making sudden turns, and the report then goes on to state that its speed was tremendous and it was visible for over 30 to 40 seconds. Despite its enormous speed and the closeness of its passage, we could not hear the least sound from it. The lookout on the port side, Seaman Hernandez, maintained that it seemed as though the object had come up out of the sea, and that it was traveling northwards, and then suddenly changed course towards us. Continuing on, page 23. The importance of this case, therefore, that it is both a truly oceanic one and also of a something coming up out of an ocean, just as Dr. Vallee's thing did. That would be the one near the Arctic that shot up through the ice. The other recent significant case was reported on the 20th of July 1967 in the log of an Argentinian ship, Navarro. This occurred some 120 miles off of the coast of Brazil, about 6:15 p.m. Alright, so the captain received a call on the intercom system that one of his officers, Jorge Montoyo, to the effect that there was something strange near the ship. Arriving at once on deck, Captain Ardeza beheld a shining object in the sea no more than about 50 feet away from the starboard side. That's pretty close. It was a cigar-shaped, and he estimated its length at about 105 to 110 feet. It had a powerful blue and white glow, made no noise whatsoever, left no wake in the water. The mysterious craft passed the Navarro for 15 minutes, paced the Navarro. It's funny what the mind sees when you look at a word. The mystery craft suddenly dived and passed right under the Navarro, vanished rapidly in the depths at great speed. As it went, it glowed brightly beneath the water. Now remember, I do these book reviews and read from books. The fluidity of my speech would be a lot better if I was just going to tell you what I think. But when you're reading from a book, it's a little more difficult. But I do it this way to increase the believability and credibility of what I'm trying to get across. The authors wrote this stuff, famous authors. Ivan Sanderson. And also, give you a gist of what's in the book, and to prompt you possibly to go buy the book. I'm not making any money on this. So that you can learn the facts of what's going on in our world. Because something surely is going on behind the scenes. We citizens know little of it. For example, RAND Corporation, the Air Force, Navy, Army building underground cities all over the USA. FEMA camps on the surface and arming the police like German stormtroopers. What's going on? Sky spraying the sky with chemicals and radiations from HAARP, destroying the environment, failing crops, causing droughts, killing bees, killing birds, making people sick. One has to ask oneself what is going on. Have the so-called aliens up there come back, or have they always been here, and have they just deemed it there's too many people on the planet? Do they think of the people just like cattle? They don't really see us as intelligent human beings. So if these aliens have been here all along, they are certainly suspect as being part of what the chain of command, the hierarchy behind the scenes, in my opinion. Alright, getting back to this glowing bright object in the water, Chief Officer Carlos described the object as a submergible UFO with its own illumination. The witnesses were firm in their instances that the luminous cigar looked totally different from a submarine or a whale. Lloyd's of London, however, calmly engulfs or ingests them. So these insurance companies get reports on this stuff. And, they don't turn a blind eye. They put it in their reports. Going back into maritime history, you can probably look at the Lloyd's of London's insurance charts and records that hundreds of years, and these sightings have been documented there. Such history is virtually clogged with reports of this nature. Alright, moving to page 27, Charles Fort reports that an enormous object was seen to rise out of the sea off Cape Race on November 12th, 1887. Charles Fort, a notary, well-known author. This report states an object described as a large ball of fire was seen to rise from the sea near Cape Race. We are told that it rose to a height of 50 feet and then advanced close to the ship, then moving away, remaining visible for about 5 minutes. As reported by Flamarine, it was enormous. Captain Moore also stated that about the same place I have seen such appearances before. Meantime, on the 28th of October 1902, 3 a.m., one of the most startling reports of all came to hand. This is in the Gulf of Guinea. The log of the SS Fort Salisbury stated, course due north, sea calm, sky clear. Fort Salisbury stated that the lookout observed a huge dark object several hundred feet off the starboard. He called the second officer, Raymar, who hurried on deck, joined the lookout and the helmsman. It was a little frightening, but it was between 500 and 600 feet in length. It had 2 lights, one on each end, a mechanism of some kind. In 1902, reverting to the 1887 once again, we find a neat one from the log of the Dutch barge, the J.P.A. Captain's Suite. In a fierce storm, 2 objects were sighted in the air above the ship, one luminous, the other dark. They fell into the sea with a loud noise. And so these reports go on, backward in time unto the first records of a true oceanic navigations, and they came from all over. So like I said, Lloyd's of London, the old newspapers back then, the authors of books like this would scour those old newspapers and find these reports. Throughout history. Reproduced from the UFO Investigator, a journal of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomenon of Washington, D.C., the Diary of Andrew Boxham, published in 1925 by the Bernice Bishop Museum on Honolulu, about 3 o'clock this morning, the 12th August 1825, the middle watch on deck was astonished to find everything around them suddenly illuminated. Turning their eyes to the eastward, they beheld a large, round, luminous body rising up about 7 degrees from the water to the clouds, and falling again out of sight, and a second time rising and falling. So I guess the ship was having a little bit of trouble launching from the water. It was the color of a red-hot cannon shot and appeared about the size of the sun. It gave so great a light that a pin might be picked up on the deck of the ship. A lot of glowing ships are sighted quite often these days. If you go on MUFON, as we did in my previous book on the UFOs recently, the reports these days in 2015 and 2014 are off the chart. A lot of them, the glowing orbs and glowing objects. One does not wish to be grossly impertinent, but one is constrained to ask just what the heck is the matter with all the classes of skeptics, stuffed shirts, and other experts. How can they continue to attempt to deny the validity of all these reports when they are taken from such serious documents as ship's logs? I used to have a big 32-foot sailboat, Morgan, and we had to keep a log when I traveled from Florida to the Bahamas. You know, you don't sit down there and write what happened and create lies in those reports. You know, I was in a huge storm and lightning and different things, and when you're traveling great distances, every hour you'd like to put on your compass direction and where you are. Anyways, their contention is that all of them are either lies or cases of mistaken identity. Well, I think if you're going to go through hundreds and thousands of years and studying all the things like I've done in all these videos and books, you know, some of it may have some falsity to it, some false parts, issues, authors, books, but I really doubt all of it does. It's cold and dry here in North Carolina, snowing today. Makes my mouth dry. Oh, the contention is that all of them are either lies or cases of mistaken identity. And what do these self-appointed experts make of the corollary evidence of some form of highly technical civilization occupying the bottoms of the oceans? One scientist came up with a completely new theory and decided to try it out. He set up a mile-long antenna to prove his point. The antenna was laid along the continental shelf. They had trouble communicating with submarines under the ocean. The radio signals like FM and AM radio stations on the surface don't work well in the ocean. So communication with submerged ships is difficult. What startled the men aboard the research ship was the reception of the signal, and then a repeat of the signal followed by a strange code which the computers are still trying to break. So they think some kind of underground entities, ship, city, whatever, was responding to the long wire laid on the continental shelf, sending signals into the ocean. The signals in the experiment were picked up and mimicked by something unknown, and then this something began transmitting its own signals on the same wavelengths used by the Navy scientists. Something strange was definitely down there. The Navy report stated alert ONR scientists had even tracked the source of the alien signal and discovered that it appeared to emanate from one of the deepest areas of the Atlantic, a spot with depths measured 29,000 feet. There is something going on down there, or there is not. And it's about time everybody made up their mind, one way or the other. Moving on to chapter 3 here. Page 32. We have seen that reports of some things, and apparently of some forms of constructions, in the oceans have been submitted for over a century and alleged from many centuries before. In 1067 AD, 1,000 years ago almost, from Godfrey's lectures in English, I guess, in this year people saw a fire that flamed and burned fiercely in the sky. It came near the earth for a little time, brilliantly lit it up. Afterwards it revolved, ascended on high, and then descended into the sea. So a brilliantly lighted ball came down, rose up again, and then descended into the sea. In the country of Northumberland, this fire showed itself in 2 seasons of the year. So that would be 1,000 years ago. In the Northern Isles, British. The British Isles were twice visited by something annoying form of UFO in 1066, again about 1,000 years ago, which seemed to have been on the rampage, which evidently went down into the sea. Similar affairs exercised the clergy and other authorities and the common people throughout the following centuries. Then a most remarkable fellow in the Society of Great Britain published in 1860 a 58-page report entitled Meteorites and Fireballs. His name was R.P. Gregg. And sequel to the reports on luminous meteorites, now continued for a series of years in the volumes of British Association reports. 2 papers on the same subject in the numbers of Philosophical Magazine and Journal of Science for November and December 1854. This is one of the most remarkable papers ever published and should be read by just about everybody, from astronomers to UFO buffs, before any of them start pontificating. So I guess before you state your opinion, read these reports. Here are over 2,000 reports of tangible objects that maneuvered in the sky, fell from the sky, blew up, killed people, dropped all manner of junk, from stones to metal objects, great blobs of jelly-like substances, which on occasion appeared out of or plunged into the sea. Wow. Get the book. You'll probably read it better than I'm reading it. Now Charles Fort took the year 1800 as his starting point, and he burrowed most diligently into American, British, and French scientific literature and newspaper morgues. He dredged up quite a number of the same reports, and among them several of the goings into and comings out of the sea by unidentified objects that appeared to be constructions and intelligently controlled, and that they maneuvered and otherwise performed in a manner that meteorites and bolides cannot do. Page 34, that upon June 18, 1845, according to the Malta Times, from the brig Victoria, the ship, about 900 miles east of Aldeli, Asia Minor, that'll be over there in Asia, 3 luminous bodies were seen to issue from the sea, rise up out of the sea. At about half a mile from the vessel, they were visible for 10 minutes. Reports further stated that these objects were about 5 times the diameter of the moon and appeared to be connected by some kind of glowing streamers The same objects appear to have been observed at the same time from as far away as the Syrian coast. Reports of objects, mostly luminescence, or displaying lights or emitting beams of light, coming out of and going into the sea are so numerous that one has to resort to a mere listing. Okay, so in order, and again, I'm not reading everything, just highlighted portions here. So if it seems like I'm jumping around, I'm just giving you what I think are the important sentences. And in order to bridge the gap from that wonderful, though all too brief period of enlightenment circa 1860, of which we will hear a lot more in our modern post-World War II age, like I said, after World War II, the UFO sightings went off the charts. You suppose they did that because of the nuclear explosions? If they're in the seas, you know, did the UFOs, aliens feel threatened? Who knows what's going on? That's why we're doing these book reviews. 2nd of November, 1885, at dawn, a very luminous flame, first bluish, then greenish, moving at a height of 5 to 6 meters, made a series of turns around the ferry boat pier. Its blinding luminous lighted the street and flooded the inside of the houses with light. It fell into the sea. No noise was heard when the immersion took place. 16th of June, 1909. The first one, especially remarkable, was made by Doug Hoey, N.M. and Mr. Diligentity, Inspector of the Civil Guard, head of the meteorological station. A bolide of an elongated shape, truncated at both ends, flew over the city in a west-east course, casting luminosity. The witnesses, has a whole long list of names here, who were fishing at sea, reported that the phenomenon lasted for 8 to 10 minutes, between the time the object appeared and the time it fell into the sea, at about 16 kilometers from shore. Okay, in 1968, NICAP brought to light an extraordinary case from the Northeast Pacific that occurred in 1945. Now, I'm going to stop here with this book and go to a NICAP document, which I've collected and what I would like to share with you. Now, these reviews, again, is to help give us confidence and believability on this topic. We did this book review the day after Roswell. Philip Corso, who confessed all that he was feeding to the huge corporations in the United States and the world, bits and pieces of computer and electronic or whatever material that was on the crashed spaceships to companies in the USA and the world, and that's why we have our new cell phones and flat screen TVs and other technologies. Whitley Strieber talks about all his sightings. The mysterious mystery about the star system Sirius, which is a dual star. One invisible, it's small and very dense, but it does cause perturbations, movements of the huge star. And only these Dogon Africans, Northern Africa, in their religious history, tell the whole story about these people that came down from the sky, apparently aquatic creatures. So their spaceships would have been filled full of water, which is going to be important as we continue. Then we did Richard Dolan's book, a very intensive study. Chronology of a cover-up, 1941 to 1973. And how those sightings of UFOs and whatever else was going on started the national security state in the United States, a secret government operating behind the scenes. Eric von Daniken and his material about down there in Ecuador that we continue to keep talking about, that the gold plates found look like the pyramids on the dollar bill and the eye. Here's a picture of one I've shown several times with the eye and the pyramid, and on the bottom the star system. Here's the video you can watch and go see it. Something strange about Ison. You might want to see this. Lost star of myth and time. So they talk about the precession of the time as the Earth, Sun moves around in a pattern that gives a different view of a star system over 24,000 years. And how would they have known this? We went over this book. Flying serpents and dragons. We said that these people apparently have the description of the people coming from space and were descendants of reptilian DNA. And we did several of these New Age magazines from the Freemason societies. If you go watch my videos, I'm just reviewing here. But these Freemason lodges, if anybody knows, have lodges all over the world, in every country of the world conceivably. These ones I have here, 1962, 1949, 1934. People just don't believe there is a secret establishment operating behind the scenes, like Kennedy said days before he was killed. And he said he was going to expose these people. 1927. And then we did the books on the essays from Richard Dolan. Alien Essays. And then, of course, we did this thick book here on UFO evidence. So what I wanted to do this time here, I've collected something new I'd like to share. And these cost money, serious money, and they're not easy to find. But the UFO Investigator, this, I've gotten, how many here? Got 4. And we're going to just look at one each time I do a video here. And the 4 I have is 1961, 62, 1963. Remember, that's the year Kennedy was killed. And 1965. So I thought I would just do the first one here, the UFO Investigator. It's only these, they were doing these, I think, quarterly reports, 8 pages. Okay, facts about unidentified flying objects, flying saucers, published by the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena, 1961. Majority leaders support indicates early congressional action. Chairman Kurt backs open hearings. Congressman Joseph Kirch has pledged that public hearings will be included in the planned UFO inquiry. If I have any influence on this matter, I'm not worried about public alarm, he told NICAP, the National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomena. The Minnesota legislator chairman on the subcommittee on space problems and life sciences have informed the director that he hopes to start the hearings in which NICAP's evidence will be fully presented early next year, and this is October 61. Further indications on a thorough investigation have been received from Representative Dominic Daniels, New Jersey, writing to NICAP member Harry S. Jones, Hoboken. After a discussion with Chairman Kirch, Daniels said attention will be focused on the UFO problem. Back in 1961, before we went to the moon, certainly, probably about the time that Kennedy said that we were going to try to go to the moon, within the century. So they had the Congress and everybody was talking about a UFO problem. at the next session, which starts in 3 months. Here's a copy of the letter. The statement below is an extract from the letters recently sent to Congressman Kirch, to NICAP member Kathleen Dina, Wade Wellman, and others. Dear Mr. Wellman, however, whenever hearings be connected this session or after the first of the year, you may rest assured they will include some public hearings if I have any influence on the matter. Respectfully yours, Joseph Kirch, House of Representatives. There's the letter. Press pause and read it. Alright, so moving on. I'm not going to tell you all these details, the original plan published by the House, yada yada. But I want to get into the actual sightings in these investigative reports, get beyond the politics. But it is quite extensive, the politics that was involved. Apparently the government wanted to cover it up and shut it up. 2 jet airliners encountered UFO flying disc. The Federal Aviation Agency had just confirmed to NICAP of the sighting of a large, round, flying object by 2 jet airliners crews encountered over the Pacific, September 21. The mysterious device swiftly outdistanced the Boeing 707s. Reports were radioed to the FAA towers at Wake and Honolulu by Captain Griffin, commanding a British Overseas Airways Corporation plane, and by a Pan American Airways captain. Details indicating a space machine much larger than any now possible on Earth were relayed to the Air Force intelligence. On September 25th, in a surprising press comment, AFA headquarters admitted being flooded with reports of flying objects near Wake Island. Captain Griffin said the BOAC jet was at 37,000 feet in a gray pre-dawn sky when the UFO appeared. Suddenly we saw this bright ring in the sky about 50 degrees up. The British pilot described the object as a round with sharply outlined edges and was very clear, with a very clear hole in the center. It was traveling in our direction, but at a far greater speed. There appeared to be a reflection light coming down in front of it. The object went over the horizon in 7 minutes. The confirming Pan American report also was logged at Honolulu. The FAA had sent both reports to be released to NICAP if there are no official objections. Based on the first reports, these points seem evident. The object was not an ICBM missile, nor was it a satellite re-entering the atmospheres. These appear only as small balls of fire briefly visible. So these are pretty interesting reports to get back in 1961. 8 pages on a quarterly basis. Let's see here more. Alright, UFO investigator, engineer at Rocketdyne, continue page 1, column 2. Politics, I didn't want to get into all that. Discussing Chairman Kurtz's views expressed in 2 forthright letters to NICAP. So they were having a difficult time getting these hearings before Congress. Here's a little letter with all the signatures. Of very prominent people, be it resolved by the members of the Board of Governors of this National Investigation Committee on Aerial Phenomenon on this 24th day of August, 1961, that appreciation be expressed to Donald Keyhole. So those were the signatures you saw there. Alright, back to the plane sighting over Honolulu. The reflected light. Sorry about that, my phone rang. Got to do my day job to pay the bills. So back to that report. at such a high altitude, an unknown device had to be extremely large, at least 700 feet in diameter, for its edges and the hull to be so clearly seen by the Boeing crew. The size and description rule out all Earth-made rockets. So my point of all of this, with invisible residents and the serpents and dragons, the biblical history and all that stuff, and Planet Nibiru, Planet X, is to come up with a plausible explanation for all of this mystery. All of the goings-on. What's going on? What's the credibility of UFOs? Back in '61, they were having congressional hearings. Back in 1970, Ivan Sanderson, a well-known author, wrote this book. I have many more books I'm going to show you on UFO. I collect them. So, let's see here. The donut shape the cruise reported is similar to the future space proposed by rocket expert Werner von Braun, the ex-German scientist. A huge donut-shaped ring containing compartments for crews and equipment rotating to create gravity. I have a theory on some of this stuff. As they say, they find jewelry or parts of bones of people or objects, million years in the past, dug in coal mines. I'm convinced that possibly time travel or interdimensional travel through portals created by electrical forces, like the Philadelphia experiment where they put microwave transmitters all over the ship, turned them on, brrr, the whole ship was microwave transmitters all over it. They were trying to create some kind of technologies to make the ship invisible. But what happened was that gigantic ship disappeared from view and reappeared hundreds of miles down the coast with some of the crewmen half in and half out of the bulkheads. Can you imagine? Right out of a sci-fi TV show. So apparently if you create these, like a Jacob's ladder, where you see the little electric climb up the two poles and down, and then some guy was working with the Jacob's ladder, and a pen of his pocket fell out while he was in the experiment, and it fell through the Jacob's ladder and reappeared 12 feet across the room on the floor. It jumped in time. You can look this stuff up. There's all kinds of stories and books about it. So if this is true, and if in the future they were using these technologies in spaceships or whatever else, could they have sent some objects a million years in the past? Hundreds of thousands of years in the past? If the technology or the science of it is real, then of course they could have, and it would explain some of the unexplainables. One would have to also believe that there are entities who know all about this stuff, which I should take a pause right now and go over that. You know, crop circles. Look at the wings and the disc on that crop circle. Look at the wings and the disc on this guy here, Enlil. Apparently the people from space who came down here. The ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics. Look at the wings and the disc on the top of this. And in Baalbek, Lebanon, north of Israel, the blocks of stone down there are bigger than tractor trailers on the base of this thing. And apparently that was a city, according to the Zechariah Stitchin's writings, interpretations of the stones they found in the Middle East, that they used that place like Baalbek as a space station or a space city port. And here we got one of the entities with the wings you see there in the middle. Egyptian hieroglyphics, the circle with the wings. So if there are UFOs and aliens and they've been here forever, here's a bird with this sun god thing on the top. Ancient hieroglyphics with the wings and the disc. More of the Inky crew, the Anunnaki. with the wings and the disc. A Shriner's seemingly Masonic metal symbol decoration. Wings and the disc. More Egyptian hieroglyphics with a mummy. Wings and the disc. Some of their huge buildings with the wings and the disc on the buildings. And on and on and on. Look at the snake, the reptilians, on the circle. Then some of the Anunnaki are supposed to have gone up there to the Netherlands, north of Europe, Northern Europe, and that would be the Norse gods, Odin and Thor. Look at the wings on his helmet. The Norse god and the pyramids. One of the Norse god queens. I've shown this before, the family picture of the Norse gods. So who were these people with all their technologies? Thor, Odin, Frida, Thor. The rulers, divine leaders, who broke off from the supposedly ones down in the Middle East. They had a fight. One would think that they thought they were divine. And powerful. Look at the snake under his cloak. And then there's a book by, the book called Giants, Stephen Quayle. And they got Smithsonian and other institutions have dug up skeletons that big, actually, with 6 or 7 archaeologists standing around the head. Is there some truth in this history? And then, of course, they said that some of these creatures were reptilians in nature and mated with the women on Earth. It's a statue. That's certainly a reptilian with a baby. And then when they marry with humans, the DNA breaks down, as you can see. Then, of course, you got the Greys. Apparently, which are robotic types that are controlled by the reptilians. Apparently, they say that a lot of the hierarchy, kings and queens and people mentioned in Fritz Springmeier's book of the Bloodlines are of DNA entities, shapeshifters, changelings. As I've shown you before here. Could this possibly be true? That you go look at these pictures and you can see them shape-shifting. YouTube's got a lot of this stuff there. And then to tie all this together with today, over there in California, some guy was photographing these people, SWAT team type people doing exercises, and he was harassed and told to stop filming them. Look up this video. Cops harass citizen for filming police in public. Look how they're dressed. So these look like ordinary citizens that are police officers. Do they really know what they're involved in? Look at the wings on his shirt. Do I have to connect the dots for people? Look at the wings. Everywhere in all this ancient stuff. The wings on his shirt. the gear that the police get now. Why would the police have gear like that? So I'm saying if there are aliens, and back in 1961, they got these NICAP reports, which I'll continue on here. An Air Force intelligence manual shows flying disc, back in 1961. This official flying disc or flying saucer illustration, never made public before, is taken from an Air Force intelligence manual, AFM 20 space 0-3, chapter 9, page 3. And this is the picture inside the Air Force manual back then. It was telling them what to do if they were to sight something like this. If it wasn't true, why would this be in the Air Force manual? The huge disc approaching the Air Force bomber in the foreground closely resembles UFOs officially reported by the Air Force Navy. What I'll do is I'll just hold this up for you if you want to pause and read it. You can go ahead and pause it. And I'll move on. Pilot chases 50-foot saucer, page 3. Another article. The recent pursuit of a flying saucer by the Utah pilot, fully confirmed by other pilots and Air Force airport personnel, is being investigated by Air Force intelligence. The chase occurred around noon, October 2nd, near Utah Central Airport, Salt Lake City. 2 National Air Guard jets were scrambled after the private plane radioed a report, but the strange machine eluded them in a swift vertical ascent. The disc-shaped UFO was first seen by Waldo Harris, veteran pilot, as he taxied off the runway, climbing towards the object, which was hovering at about 65 to 7,000 feet. He closed in on about 3 miles. It appeared to be a large disc, Harris later reported. It was shaped like a pair of saucers, one turned upside down on the other. The object was light gray, and it was at least 50 feet across and 4 feet thick. There were no visible openings or trails or exhaust. I was about 3 miles from it when it suddenly moved upward like an elevator. Like my sound effects. As the disc headed south, Harris pursued it. During the chase, he radioed the FFA tower at Salt Lake City's municipal airport that he had sighted a flying saucer, relaying details through the Utah Central and Provo airports. Because of the disc speed, Harris temporarily lost contract, but he sighted the object again, abruptly stopping. The UFO held position almost directly over the Utah Lake Omino radio station, as if investigating the directional trans. Continued on page 4. Transmitter omni-range is used to guide pilots in the search. After hovering there, said Harris, it moved straight up, then went west at an extremely accelerated speed. It disappeared for a few seconds. Meanwhile, the flying disc and the chase by Harris were watched by 7 observers at Utah Central Airport, including pilots Virgil Redmond and Clyde Card, the airport operators, Mr. and Mr. J, and aircraft mechanic Mr. Butler. Seen through binoculars, the saucer appeared metallic, like a dull aluminum. When it turned towards the sun, it showed a brilliant reflecting light. Witnesses agreed on the disc rocketing motion when it hovered on its terrific acceleration. F Force investigators team from Hill Air Force Base questioned all observers, and a spokesman said it was the best report from this area. No explanation was given for the sighting. Unusual interest was also shown by the Navy. A separate investigation was made by Lieutenant John Lee, Naval Intelligence. Pilot Harris revealed he was previously made fun of by people who saw flying saucers. I am sure from its performance that what I saw was a controlled craft. I now definitely believe that these objects come from some other planets. So that's page 4, a little bit more on this. Air Force UFO report order destroyed. So apparently when somebody made a report, they fill out these little cards. Evidence that the Air Force destroys some official UFO reports have been given to Professor Charles Manley, NICAP board member by Air Force source. The photocopy below reproduces two-part of the Air Force Intelligence Information Report, covering a UFO sighting by 2 Air Force officers. Though the report was not unusual, the destroy order, which the source said was not uncommon, indicates a form of censorship previously known to NICAP. So again, I say that the people running this world, the Masonic Lodge people and all the other elites, know fully well what's going on and what has been going on all along. And they're the ones who are sending all this SWAT gear to our police departments all over the country. I have to ask why. Why did they have those wings and things on their shirts and their uniforms and the badges? Why so many videos talking about the Anunnaki and the return of planet Nibiru, all correspondingly, by the way, with the biblical thing of the New World Order and the return of an Antichrist? Which, as we all know, Satan was the snake in the garden, so he was definitely a reptilian. And they're talking about the reptilian hybrids that are here in our world controlling everything. So that's the only explanation I could see why these Air Force would destroy these reports and censor and create the Condon report. So let's go back into this document. So apparently there was a big concern. This is 1961, remember? This NICAP report. And there was a danger that the United States and Russia was worried about, that if UFOs came over the North Pole, that the United States government might think it was Russian nuclear bombs, and we would retaliate before realizing they were just alien spacecraft. Here was one of the pictures describing that effect. See SAC headquarters with the nuclear missiles going out, and Russia and the UFOs. And the top of this, it says accidental war danger increases. So in a recent statement, Vice President Johnson declared, the Western allies must be prepared for every possibility, eventuality, deliberate or accidental. Remember this, 3 weeks ago, Vice President and the Senate Preparedness Subcommittee sent an urgent IP NICAP report on the increasing hazard, the danger of mistaking UFOs for Soviet bombers or missiles. So there is no UFOs, but if they come over the horizon, they might be UFOs and not nuclear bombers, so let's not send out our nukes. So they're telling with the public they don't believe, but in Congress they certainly do believe. There you have it. UFO approaches Brazilian Airlines, another report here on page 5. An unidentified flying object emitting a brilliant bluish glow maneuvered around a vast airlines plane on night July 24th, 1961. Plane on the... I'll hold this up if you want to read it. You can pause. So, it's interesting reports. I got 4 of these, so maybe I'm going to wind up making 4 videos on this Invisible Residence book with all these sidebars, and hopefully get our point across that this stuff was certainly real. What's that got to do with today and the sky spraying and the destruction of our soil and water with all the chemicals they're dumping? And the Georgia USA Guidestones where they want 500 million people on the planet, so 6 billion people have to go. Who's making those decisions? Do they think of us humans as just cattle? Apparently, These are the descriptions of the creatures, some of them. These are ancient monuments and dug up out of the ground, thousands of years old. This is what they say in people's drawings or whatever there are of them. Captain Rupert letters. So Captain Rupert was, since the death of Captain Rupert, former head of the Air Force UFO project, many members have inquired about the Rupert mystery. Why did he change his book to deny the existence of UFOs? The following extracts from Rupert's letters to me before and after I became NICAP's director may help explain the puzzle and why, even after his death, he is still the target of official attacks. So was Captain Rupert killed to shut him up? There's all the letters people wrote in, and his book took a turn for the negative, denying it when his career was investigating them. Alright, so there you have it. Astronomer warns against firing at planets. What if they're inhabited like Venus or Mars? In a recent lecture, Dr. Rupert Lippert, astronomer at the University of San Diego, said he considered it wrong to send lethal rockets to impact other planets without knowing whether civilizations exist there. You think? Sounds like common sense. So I've just taken one more peek at this book before I end this. Let's see, on November 1885, I think we went over that, a mysterious flame, first bluish. In 1968, NICAP, that's what we just said, the UFO investigator. I've got about 4 of these. They're like $30, $40 if you can find them on the internet for sale. Originals. Alright. Submerging or emerging UFOs involved a large UFO seen in 1945 by crew members of the U.S. Army Transport, which had been hauling munitions and supplies to Alaska. He reported the sighting to Professor N. Kanohusky, Department of Geology, who was a NICAP advisor. The Deerloff incident involved in the summer of 1945 while Crawford was serving as one of the Army's radio men aboard the ship. Was on the port side near the radio room when he heard shouts from some of the crew. He turned and saw a large round object which had just emerged from the sea. Several crewmen saw the UFO actually appear from underwater, an estimated mile or so from the Deerloff ship. The unknown craft slowly, darkly against the setting sun, climbed almost straight up for a few moments, then it arced into level flight and began to circle the ship. All of the observers were convinced it was a large object. Crawford estimated the UFO to be 150 to 250 feet in diameter. The UFO circled the vessel for 2 or 3 times, moving slowly with no audible sound. All the witnesses felt it was self-propelled, otherwise the strong winds would have visibly affected its movements. After several minutes, the flying object disappeared to the south or southwest. Suddenly, the crew saw 3 flashes of light from the area where it vanished. Such going-ons, intos, and coming out of had continued unabated for centuries and were still going strong at the dawn of the modern age, which incidentally coincides with the initiation of both Saucermania and ufology in America, to wit, the year 1947, right after the 2 nuclear explosions in Japan. In that year, we had something of a Southern California, a flying object which fell into the sea off the coast. However, further inquiry elucidated the fact that the damn thing maneuvered and for some time had been thereby considerably peeved the Coast Guard. So I think I'll end this video. We'll read some more. We'll look at some more NICAP investigative reports and politics of the times. And of course we know Kennedy was killed in '63. And he was a senator for like 17 years, 16 years prior to becoming a president. So Kennedy was certainly aware of all of these activities. The Air Force manual had this in one of the pages, in descriptions of what to do if you sighted it. So obviously they believed it was real. The powers that be were worried about a nuclear war from the UFOs coming over the North Pole. That gun represents SAC headquarters in Omaha, Nebraska, where they have all the missiles and the bases underground. Interesting stuff. What does that have to do with the New World Order and trying to inject all the population with identification chips, monitor them? Who is really behind all this? Why are the police officers have the wings on their uniforms and the badges? If you pay attention to the stuff, you'll see a lot of the Egyptian signature symbols. Look at them, these two guys on their shirts. Just trying to put the puzzle together. Hope this video made sense. Thank you for watching my videos. Rick Miracle reporting.